Busy night last night. It was a work session. Of course, you guys talking a lot about budgets and this and that. Also, dipping into that reserve, that's becoming an issue, and a lot of talk last night on how that can be alleviated. Some people said cutting some services, paying fee increases, and also even a special safety levy was brought up. Let's talk about last night's council meeting and this topic of dipping into the reserves.
Yeah, we looked at a couple department budgets, aviation and Met Transit, the information technology budget, and the planning budget, and looked at them individually. The problem that we have with our budget doesn't pertain to departments like aviation and Met Transit or Public Works, which are so-called enterprise funds. And that's actually most of the city's budget. Those things are paid for with other dollars and are essentially self-supporting through fees, or in the airport's case, charges to the airlines, federal dollars that come in the case of both Public Works and aviation. Or they can just increase their charges. We increase our water rates or wastewater rates. The problem that we have is in the other departments, like police and fire and parks and administration, the legal department, that are dependent upon the general fund. And that's supported largely with property taxes that have not been keeping up with expenses. And that's where we're facing very serious pressure. So that's what we were talking about a lot last night. And unfortunately, there's only so many reserves, and we're going to be through those real soon.
You know, you're talking, about like the airport getting grants and everything like that. Doesn't the police department / fire department / parks department get grants also?
They do, and they're good about going out to look for those. But in the grand scheme of things, they're pennies on the dollar. They're often for special projects. They don't last. They're maybe for equipment. The police department, like most of the departments, 70 to 80, even 85% of their costs are oftentimes people, and those grants often don't cover people. There are some federal grants that help to support our police department in cooperation with sheriff and the feds on drug interdiction especially, which are very beneficial, but they fall far short of covering the need.
So it's looking like probably next year that you guys might want to put a special safety levy on the ballot, right?
Yeah, we're going to have to. At least that's my perspective. We had a good, frank discussion about trying to make some cuts, which I said I would not rule out. Some council people just really didn't want to go there, but I don't know that we'll have a lot of alternative. But the reality is I don't think the public would put up with the amount of cuts to police and fire and parks department that we would need to not dip into reserves. And because we're talking something in the neighborhood of $6 million this year, and that's just, I just don't see how we can bridge that gap without going to the voters and ask them if that's the choice that they want to make. The reasons that we're facing these problems, there's 3 or 4 important ones. One is we got rid of this franchise fee that brought in about $2.5 million over the last 2 years. That means that we've lost about $5 million of revenue. The taxpayers have paid less, so their total load has actually gone down. But costs at the same time have continued to go up. We have hired new city staff, not many, but almost all of that growth has occurred in police and fire, about 16 FTEs in the last few years. And we've given cost of living increases of 2.9%. And for about half of our employees, that's the only increase they'll ever see because they've maxed out on their seniority. So, it would be nice if we didn't have that commitment, but we're in a competitive market and we have to pay people what they're worth.
Yeah. Full disclosure here, if a safety mill levy came up, I would vote for it automatically. But do you think people are kind of getting tax weary a little bit. School District 2 just got a high school mill levy that was passed, and more than likely to look at a elementary levy next year. So you're not the only levy that is probably going to be out there. So do you think the taxpayers are going, oh, okay, I know it's only $5 on a $100,000 home, but that's $5, you know? Do you think people are going, enough is enough?
Well, I think there's always that sentiment, right?
Yeah.
So we need to lay out the case for any sort of increase as best we can in a very professional way that shows the data. You know, things like our budget for this year actually contemplates a slight reduction in people's property taxes, which is kind of we're suffering, but that's the reality of what we can do. We can't increase under our charter beyond our 74 mills. That's capped. So with some growth and our public safety mill levy from 15 years ago, which was the last one, that was a fixed $8 million a year. So every year with inflation, it's become worth less and less and less. And so in order to increase hiring and not lay off police and fire, we've had to take money from parks. And the net result is that people have actually paid a lot less on that $8 million because it gets spread more and more to more and more people, and of course inflation. So we need to lay out those facts. Yes, people always say they don't want to pay more taxes, so you've got to give them a choice. Would you like to hire more cops, or would you like to stay the same, or would you like to lay off cops? And we just have to do our job in laying out the options.
You know, let's talk a little bit. A lot of different activities going on in Billings. You were at the MSUB Wine Fest. I think that was the 47th annual one. One gentleman gave $600,000, and with all the other monies, it comes up to about $1 million. What a great event.
Yeah, it really is. That's a big event, and a lot of people there. It was rainy and cold, but they had heaters inside the tent. It was toasty, so it was very pleasant. And it's just great that they were able to raise that money, because a great city needs a great university, and a great university needs a great city. It's really a partnership that we have with MSU Billings. When people choose a university, often they're choosing the city where that university is. And so in today's world, education is a solution to a lot of our problems. It's going to reduce crime. It's going to build wealth. And MSUB does a great job across a lot of different disciplines. So we need to really support them and as they support us.
Coming up on Monday, of course, is Memorial Day 2019. I remember you being, I can't remember what cemetery last year. A lot of different ceremonies going on, especially at the Billings owned cemetery. Let's talk a little bit about that and the importance of that day.
Yeah, that's right. Last year I spoke at the Memorial Day celebration at Mount View Cemetery. I'll be there again this year just to act as sort of an MC. I think it begins at 10 o'clock, and it's just a great opportunity to recognize our veterans and our military, especially those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. And Scott, I appreciate your taking the time to promote Military Appreciation Month here in May. And this is the time to be especially attentive to our military families and our veterans.